So the angel. I think this is quite a difficult poem. It's one of Blake's poems that focuses on sexual awakening and the idea that if you suppress love and desire, then it deprives you from the warmth and pleasure of love. I think some people will find this perhaps a little bit confusing, a little bit difficult, and if I was approaching the idea of sexual maturity in Blake's poetry, I might be thinking more about I don't know, the Sick Rose or the Little Girl Lost, Little Girls Found poems. I think perhaps are a little bit more accessible. There are lots and lots of different readings on this particular poem. I'm just going to focus on one reading, but there are many metaphors and different metaphorical readings of this poem. So you know, it's worth looking at, I think, if you are aiming very high. I don't think so far we've had anyone write about this poem in an exam, but it's still, I think, potentially something that you could use to support an idea rather than using this as a kind of your opening gambit poem, the poem that you kind of focus your ideas on. I dreamt a dream, what can it mean? That I was a maiden queen, guarded by an angel mild, witless woe was near beguiled. Blake sets this within a dreamscape, within a dream scenario. Writing about dreams, it was a medieval technique, so he's building on a literary tradition. That a moral tale or a romantic tale is going to be told. Blake did believe that dreams allowed access to the subconscious mind. Therefore, what we can say is potentially is the subject of this poem about something shameful that shouldn't be thought of within the conscious mind, or is he focusing on something to do, focusing on instinctive desires as opposed to explicit desires? I'll let you draw your own conclusions on that once as we talk through it. I dreamt a dream, what can it mean? And this, although the question mark isn't there, it is a rhetorical question that shows a lack of awareness of experience. And the narrator says, and that I was a maiden queen. Now, a maiden referred mostly to a young virginal woman. Some readings say that this is about a child. The reading that I'm going to give you is about a young woman as opposed to a child. And a maiden queen. So yeah, a kind of a girl who hasn't reached sexual awakening yet. I think that's the phrase that I would rather use. And is guarded by an angel mild. Now again, there are lots and lots of different readings that talk about the angel being a literal angel, being a guardian angel of a child, the angel signifying the child's state of innocence. The particular reading that I'm going to give you, we're going to focus on an angel being kind of a suitor, somebody who is very close to the child, who is a kind of like a potential, be crude about it, potential boyfriend material, that kind of thing. Okay, this is a really interesting line though, this witless woe was near beguiled. Witless woe, if we break down the language, focuses on unnecessary pain. And beguiled, if we talk about beguiled in contemporary terms, then beguiled means to deceive someone, but the language in Blake's time meant when you beguiled, it meant you passed time pleasantly. So really what this is focusing on, the idea is that unnecessary pain seen by the speaker, by the narrator, meant sadness. It was never beguiled, never passed pleasantly. It just meant sadness. Now this could refer to, I don't know, the cruelty of society or the hardships of the world, but this is showing that the character, the narrator, is finding difficulty in growing up and in a world, or is seeing the difficulties that the world is being shown to her, and is finding that fact distressing. We know this because in the second stanza, and I wept both day and night, and he wiped my tears away, and I wept both day and night, and hid him from my heart's delight. We have the anaphora of the and, shows that this is taking place over an extensive period of time. The wept doesn't necessarily mean that this is some kind of I don't know, some kind of like Keatsian weeping and a wailing constantly. It could just be focusing on the idea of struggled with the hardship. This speaker has a fear and is distressed. However, the suitor calms and looks after this the narrator, and the narrator begins to enjoy the attention. Okay, so the narrator begins, hid from him my heart's delight. So the narrator begins to enjoy the attention that this suitor, the angel, is giving her. But note that the phrase hid is used. The narrator can't express her desires, and so he took his wings and fled. I think perhaps what that means is that he realizes his love is unrequited. He takes his wings and fled. He has himself, by taking his wings, he has fledged. He has become kind of like the small chick that's now matured and flown off. He has found his sexual awakening, but because that love is unrequited, it's not returned to him, he's gone off and found his enjoyment elsewhere. So she has kind of like not scared him off, but because she hasn't reached that sexual awakening yet, he has left. Then the morning comes, and the morn blushed rosy red, and that line there signify, those words there signify her sexual awakening. But she kind of confronts this. She suppresses this idea. She arms her fear with 10,000 shields and spears. Because her lover's run away, she, although she has reached this idea of sexual awakening, she suppresses the sexual thoughts, and maybe that's because, you know, we could see that with Little Girl Lost and Little Girl Found. This idea that experience brings that idea of protection, of not wanting to give anything away. In this case, her virginity. So she is kind of suppressing those sexual thoughts, and there's that use of the kind of the army language to show the kind of protection that she's trying to give herself by suppressing these thoughts. Well, her angel returns. Okay, so her suitor returns. But she was armed. She was unwilling now, although she has had this sexual awakening, she was unwilling to give herself to her suitor, because she's too old. The time of youth has fled, and grey hairs are on my head. So she has grown too old for this to happen. So really what this particular narrator has done is the narrator has suppressed, so here, suppressed the idea of, Blake really was a proponent of free love, and as we've mentioned before, that doesn't mean, it's not like the 1960s free love where he's saying go off and sleep with anyone. He's saying that sexuality is a part of life. Okay, it's a necessary part of life. It shows you the warmth and pleasures of love. However, she has suppressed those ideas, and by suppressing those ideas, she is no longer open. She cannot accept any kind of warmth and desire, and that's kind of the love within her life gone. So this is one of Blake's poem about sexual awakening. As you can probably see, you know, as going through this, you could probably counter many of the things that I've just said and come up with alternative interpretations. And really, that's the joy of the poetry, is coming up with your own interpretations. There were about 5 or 6 very similar interpretations that you can find just by googling this poem. What I've tried to do is to put it in its simplest form. I think even its simplest form, because it is such a metaphorical poem, is quite difficult. So I think if you struggle with it, yeah, go for the 6 rows, the little girl lost, little girl found, because there are more poems that are more accessible if you struggle with the concepts here. And again, I think this probably is a poem that you possibly wouldn't lead an argument with, but I think it's a poem that you could use to support ideas. That's not to say that you shouldn't lead an argument with this poem if you think that if you think that your idea is sound. Okay, I'm just giving you a little bit of advice there. Okay, so very metaphorical, problematic, and perhaps difficult poem, but yeah, very metaphorical, focusing on sexual awakening.